Our latest winter storm blasting through California, bringing big mountain snow impacts as well as rain to areas that have largely been void of some of the earlier storms this year into central and southern California. And we've got a whole string of storms lining up for next week. We're going to be tracking it all. I'm ABC 10 Chief Meteorologist Monica Wood. So let's get going on the recent storm that's been moving through. As you can see, it's been pulling through central and southern California pretty nicely here. Northern California, which was in that favorable environment and path for the early season storms, is seeing some spotty showers at best, but the brunt of this storm certainly hitting central and southern California. Taking a little closer perspective into the capital region, you can see a very distinct line here on the back edge of this. Not to say that that's going to be it here, because we've got the back edge of this storm rolling through for our Thursday. So the biggest precipitation totals have been seen through the San Joaquin Valley, the Central Valley, parts of the mother lode south of Highway 50, and then through Southern California. Whereas the 80-50 corridor, it's been pretty socked in with snow starting up mid-morning on our Wednesday, and that will continue into our Thursday as well. That continues all the way south into the central and southern Sierra. Nice to see again areas that had been not in the path of those early season storms finally starting to benefit from some of the winter precipitation. Winter weather advisory in place through tomorrow evening throughout the Sierra. Some areas will be under a winter storm warning a little bit farther to the south, but in terms of the advised area, 4 to 16 inches of new snow total accumulation from this storm cycle, with travel impacts and chain controls very likely. In fact, we already have some situations going on in the high country, and that's why we have the weather impact alert in place specifically for the Sierra. The valley, it's a normal winter storm. We're seeing spotty showers and a chance for some thunderstorms. But as far as the bigger impacts, we've got snow down to about 3,000 feet for the Sierra, with travel delays and chains coming into play as well. Looking at our view across Donner Summit and Echo Summit, as you can see here, we have quite the active weather display with snow at the summit, both at Donner and Echo Summit, as well as chain controls in place at Highway 50. Now, chains are very likely to go into effect for Donner Summit. Right now, all the trucks are being screened at Applegate. That's a little bit down the hill here from Donner Summit along I-80. At Exposition in downtown Sacramento, we have hit and miss showers, but for the most part, roads are fairly dry. Echo Summit, that's going to be on the south end of Lake Tahoe, much harder hit, and places south of that are going to be harder hit as well, with bigger accumulations. Now, on top of all of this and what's happening in the background, we've got the cold air in place. We're going to see the cold air help to make that environment a little more unstable, increase the risk of thunderstorms for today and Thursday, and also bring down our snow level tomorrow morning to about 3,000 feet. It goes up to about 4,000 feet on Thursday. Not a ton of accumulation at that elevation, but we are going to see some pretty low snow level into the upper foothills and even some of the lower Sierra. Our total accumulation, as I mentioned, upwards of about 16 inches in some pockets. That won't be the case everywhere. And the biggest totals will be seen in the central Sierra around Yosemite and then southward. But nice to see this here in March. We sometimes call it a miracle March if we haven't had a really good season, but it's been a pretty good season so far. So this is just a bonus round for us. Again, more to come next week as well. Our total rainfall in the valley, about 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch, depending on where those thunderstorms pop. We'll see some slightly higher totals. We saw that on Sunday, where areas we're seeing sunny skies, and then other areas we're seeing upwards of 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch of rain because of those very isolated areas with heavier downpours. For the foothills, at about 1/4 inch to 1/2 inch of rain. Here's a look at the futurecast. The most likely places for that thunderstorm activity into our Wednesday afternoon and early evening will be in the northern and central part of the Sacramento Valley, especially along I-5 headed northbound out of Sacramento towards Yuba City. Parts of Sutter and Colusa counties in on that action, as well as up towards Butte County. Chico could see a few pop-up thunderstorms around Red Bluff as well. This will continue until the early evening and then quiet down. Now, we will still be tracking some areas of some light showers through the morning commute. It's just not heavy accumulating rain, likely to cause some minor delays, but the biggest delays will be seen in the Sierra through tomorrow. Keep in mind, we have that winter weather advisory in place until about 11 o'clock tomorrow for at least much of this year. Some areas will have that expire at about 4 p.m. and you can see why. Through the early afternoon and mid-afternoon, we'll continue to see areas of snow, and then it really starts to wind down here by the time we get to 8 o'clock. So we'll continue to see that winter weather advisory in place south of Highway 50. Parts of the upper foothills, lower Sierra will still be seeing a few of those snow showers linger through our Thursday evening. Everything dries out for Friday, and we get a break and a nice pause before a bigger active weather period develops into next week. And that's why we've got these weather forecasts going, these extended forecasts that dive deeper. And we just have a little bit more time to go into the details of some of these specific weather events. Now, you can catch all of that on ABC 10 Plus, as well as weather explainers, climate and weather specials. We've got that all on ABC 10 Plus. It's our free streaming app. Download it wherever you stream for free on TV. All right, 8 to 14-day climate outlook. As I mentioned, a likely cooler and a very active weather pattern into next week. So the Climate Prediction Center saying we're going to be stuck in this pattern for a while. The nice thing about this, it goes all the way into Southern California, again, largely missing out in the early season active weather pattern. That will also help to at least minimize some of the drought concerns that have been growing in the past couple of months. Our 8 to 14-day weather hazard outlook also puts us in the slight path of some flood concerns and precipitation concerns. And then also, as far as heavy snow risk, we're going to continue to see that right through the Sierra Spine and over towards the coastal range, all the way through the Pacific Northwest. So if you have travel plans up there for the next 8 to 14 days, definitely want to try to time out your travel. Along the coast, we've got that high wind risk, at least in the slight category, a windy, rainy, snowy pattern developing. It's good news here. Drought monitor for the beginning of the water year, October 1st, will look like this. Actually, the state was in a pretty good place, but as I've been mentioning, the southern part of the state largely missing on the early season path of those atmospheric rivers coming through, and that elevated drought concerns and also kept peak fire season going. We really didn't see that tamp down until about February, when we started to at least draw in some precipitation. We're status quo, though, week to week. The new drought monitor coming out on Thursday, but right now, drought severity and coverage index 139. We've got some areas in extreme and severe drought, mostly in Southern California. Northern California has been really in the path and more favored for the atmospheric rivers. November, December, didn't see anything in January, but February has been a very good month as well, well above average. This is a look at our downtown Sacramento water year so far. We started off super strong. November, December, well above average. Some places it was the wettest start to the water year. Then we hit January, basically got no storms coming through. February was a big turnaround for us. And March is starting off with very active weather as well. It was technically and historically, December, January, and February are our wettest months. March, we really see things kind of fall off. So this is about it for us in terms of our real peak wet season. By April and May, things start to wind down. We see 1 or 2 storms coming through about every 4 weeks or so. They can be big rain producers just because the atmosphere is starting to warm. It can hold more moisture, and so we can get some pretty decent storms, but it's just not a consecutive series of storms that will just kind of keep the pipeline going. We're still in March, though. We do have an active weather period setting up next week. Statewide precipitation, it really is the tale of 2 different parts of the state. Northern part of the state, very wet. Southern part of the state continues to be dry, but at least we've got something in the bucket for Southern California. That being said, we're still about 5 to almost 10 inches behind in some places, whereas Northern California, Redding, Eureka, kind of showing the differences that we've been seeing. We also have our biggest reservoirs in the northern part of the state, so that is some good news there. When we talk about snowfall, we're almost at that point where we talk less about snowfall and more about snow melt. That date is April 1st. So again, historically speaking, by April 1st, we see less in the way of snowfall, more in the way of snow melt, and that will fill our reservoir. So this is kind of a tenuous time. How much water to hold in those reservoirs to prepare for incoming storms and snow melt, as well as how much to hold in the reservoirs without releasing it to prepare for the dry season, which is right around the corner. Northern Sierra, 100% of average to date, 76% of average for the Central Sierra, and the Southern Sierra sits at 75% of average. Not bad considering just about a month and a half ago, it was looking very lean for the Central and Southern Sierra. So that puts our statewide average to date at 83% and 75% for April 1st. And given that the past couple of years have been really wet, we're looking pretty good right now, especially for our reservoir supplies. We are starting to see things fill a little bit more in anticipation of what's ahead for next week. I would imagine that water managers are going to start to release a little bit more here to make capacity, because we are at 83% of capacity for Trinity, about 80% for Shasta. That's the state's biggest reservoir. Second biggest reservoir is Oroville at 84%, and Folsom sits at 64%. Traveling our way southward here, we're at about 75 to 80% full right now for New Melones and Don Pedro. San Luis off-stream pumped water is at 83% capacity. The Delta pumps were going at full steam ahead earlier this year in February, and so that was partially helping to fill San Luis. Millerton, a little bit farther to the south, we're at 56% of capacity. This is what I was mentioning about Shasta. We are starting to see that fill ever so slightly, but these are kind of the ebbs and flows that we see with the charging of that water. We see it come up here when we headed into our March period because of incoming storms in February. Releases then happen to prepare for more water coming in. Again, we're right around the corner from that peak snow melt when we'll start to see those reservoirs. You can kind of see it in this teal shade here. This is the standard that we usually see. So this is the average of how those reservoirs will rise and fall. And when we get a little bit closer to capacity, they start to release that water, both because of regulations, but also just to make way for incoming storms, which we have several in the pipeline. Part of the reason those reservoirs are sitting so nicely is because of 3 previous years that were pretty healthy here. 2022-23 drought buster year last year. I know that's in the red for downtown Sacramento, but we were only about an inch behind. So for all intents and purposes, it was nearly an average year for us. And this year is looking pretty good as well. We're starting to see those numbers come up. So got to add a little bit more precipitation to that and more coming in here. Timeline for the rest of this week, we've got the valley showers and thunderstorms for our Thursday. I mentioned that snow level down in some areas to about 3,000 to 4,000 feet. Friday and Saturday, even into the beginning of Sunday, nice looking weekend here. Break between the systems, breezy north winds, but the clouds increase on Sunday, and it does bring in a rain, snow, and wind with active weather returning next week. For today, we've got a chance of thunderstorms mainly north of I-80. For tomorrow, it's going to hug the coast just a little bit more and then really favor the Central Valley and the Central Coast. And that's because of the position of that low pressure system will just help to destabilize the atmosphere a little bit more in those areas. So there's the low that's pulling in the moisture continuously through Southern California into our Thursday evening. High pressure ridge taking over, but that cool air is going to make a big plunge south into Southern California, aided by this low pressure system that presses that storm track all the way to the south of us, and it's going to keep us in a cool and showery pattern. We get that one storm coming through for our Wednesday and Thursday, a break over the weekend, and then you see the big plume of moisture out here in the Pacific. That's what's going to be feeding us into next week. So as we make our way into our Monday, Tuesday, even into our Wednesday with brief little breaks in there, we'll continue to see this very wet pattern in place. Another break comes in on late Wednesday, but then Thursday into Friday, we get more rain with the potential for a break by the following weekend. Now, here's on the moderate to high confidence what we know and the lower confidence of what we know for next week. We have a series of storms coming in. They are colder with snow and rain impacts. Now, lower confidence for the timing and totals as well as precise snow levels. That'll be really important because when we see those lower snow levels, it helps for kind of keeping that frozen water savings account for when we need water more. You know, we see nice slow melt, but it also means bigger travel impacts chaining up at lower elevations and just kind of dealing with digging out, getting to work, getting to school, what have you. So our Thursday storm is going to wrap up here for Thursday night, and then we get into the weekend. We're dry. Monday storm again pulls its way southward, which is nice here. This particular weather model featuring the potential to see more impact, say, for central and southern California. Still too early for precise location, but then we get right into it. Friday storm comes in really cold the way that things are playing out right now for next week. Highs for tomorrow, only in the 30s for the Sierra. We'll be at 37 for Pollock Pines with a morning low of 31. Snow flurries certainly possible for the morning hours, as well as Arnold, Twain Harte, Groveland. We're kind of right on the cusp there of seeing some snow flurries. Chester with some snow, high of 44. Along the coast, we've got highs in the 50s. Morning lows will start us off in the 40s. Hit and miss showers throughout the day. And again, that slight chance of thunderstorms for our Thursday forecast with highs in the 50s. Snow lingers into our Thursday for this year. We'll start to see things pick up late on Sunday through next Monday. And then for the foothills, again, we're going to see areas of rain, and for the coast, rain next week as well. Chance of thunderstorms for that Thursday forecast. Dry for the weekend. Don't forget to spring forward on Sunday. We lose that hour of sleep, and then we're right back to the active weather by next week into our Monday through Friday forecast. On and off showers. We'll be timing it out and giving you those extended forecasts right here and on ABC 10 Plus.